Welcome you all to my channel English Education for All. Today I am going to discuss the Darkling Thrush written by Thomas Hardy. And you who have not yet subscribed my channel, please do subscribe and share to support me. Today my job is to simplify the ideas in the poem and to clarify the poem for your better understanding. Now, let us get into the text. Before I get into the text, let me tell you first about Thomas Hardy. Thomas Hardy was a transitional poet. He was a bridge between the Romantic Victorians and the modern thinkers. Again, his poem, The Darkling Thrush, was written in December 1900 and it records the turn of the 19th century. So, his poem, The Darkling Thrush, can also be a transitional poem. The poem was first titled as By the Century's Deathbed. Later, it was changed to Darkling Thrush. The poem can be a metaphor for the end or state of the Western civilization. In the poem, the poet has presented a dismal and desolate landscape. This dismal and desolate landscape is also a metaphor for the dying year, rather the dying century, the 19th century. The poet has presented a dismal and desolate landscape around, and nature has been senseless here. The lassitude of nature can also be seen to some extent. Now I am getting into the text. I leaned upon a coppice gate. The poet speaker was leaning upon a coppice gate. Here you must note the use of the word coppice gate, a gate made of thicket of bush, made of thicket of bush, and it opens unto the forest. It overgrew, the shrubs overgrew. So you can understand that the gate on which there were shrubs were not maintained well. So they overgrew and the gate opened unto the forest. And the poet's leaning indicates the poet's meditative state. The poet was in a meditative mood when frost was spectre grey and winter's dregs made desolate the weakening eye of day. Here note the word frost and winter, and the first letter of frost and that of winter have been capitalized. Here, perhaps the poet is going to indicate that frost and winter looms large on the landscape. It is not only the winter of a year, but also it is the winter of a century. So, frost and winter looms large upon the landscape. Everything on the landscape was grey and fell as the spectre, and winter's rays made desolate the weakening eye of the day. The weakening eye of the day refers to the sun, and It is made desolate by the winter's dregs. Dregs means the loss of something. Here, the dregs may indicate fogs, snow, or frost. Now think, fogs, snow, or frost are now making the sun desolate, the landscape how dull is. The tangled vine stems cover the sky. Tangled means overgrown. Vine stems means a sort of climbing plants. They too are overgrown. Again, it is indicated that nature nature remains neglected by the people. So they overgrew unruly and they climbed up to the sky like strings of broken lyres. Here you must remember the comparison. The tangled vine stems are compared to the strings of a broken lyre. Score, it is a musical term, but here it has been used to imply an ominous visual image. The tangled vine stems are compared to the strings of a broken lyre. And here also you need to remember the implication of the word lyres. Lyres here may indicate poetry or music or the Western civilization, but it was broken. It had lost its way. So it was broken. So you can realize there was a sort of incongruity between nature and the lives of man and music as well. All mankind that haunted night and the mankind who were moving about near, they had sought refuge by their house, in their house by fires. And this all mankind here refers to the 19th century people, and they are now happily by the fires in their house. The poet alone here stands on the desolate and dismal landscape. He is the representative of the 20th century people. So he is left alone on the dismal and desolate landscape. I am now moving into the second stanza. The landscape features seem to be the century's corpse outlined. The landscape seemed to be the dead body of the 19th century. He scraped the cloudy canopy, and the clouds overhead become the burial dome for the dead body of the 19th century, and the wind became the death lament for the 19th century. The ancient pulse of German birth was sunken hard and dry. I have told you earlier in the first stanza, frost and winter looms large on the landscape, and the temperature on the landscape was at the lowest point. Not only the temperature outside was at lowest point, but also the warmth in the world of mankind was at the lowest point. So the pulse of germination and fulmination was sunken hard and dry, and every spirit. And here you need to remember this ancient pulse means the process of the 19th century. The process of rebirth, the process of birth and death was active in the 19th century, but now on the verge of a new century, the poet feels that ancient pulse of germination and fulmination is in termination. পরিবর্তন হচ্ছে, was sunken, hard and dry, and the pulse was sunken. The life, the spirit of life was sapped and dried away, and every spirit upon the earth seemed fervorless as I. Not only the poet himself, but also everything on the landscape looked fervorless and depressed, spiritless. The sense of death is intensified in the second stanza. The dismal and desolate landscape of the first stanza made room for the second stanza. Now I am moving to the third stanza. Third stanza appears with a note of hope brought by the thrush. See here, at once a voice arose among the bleak twigs overhead. At once indicates the turning of the tone, the turning of the poet's tone. Before it, in the first stanza and in the second stanza, there was death, but in the third stanza, there is some hope brought by the thrush. At once a voice arose among the bleak twigs overhead. The thrush now comes out. The thrush sings among the lifeless twigs overhead, and the thrush was singing full-heartedly. It was singing of joy, and here you have to remember it was an evening song. From the word evening song, the indication of prayer we get. Evening song may also indicate the prayer in Anglican Church. So the poet may here indicate that in such depression and desolation, religious faith may bring some hope, and that religious faith is well indicated by the thrush, by the song of the thrush. And aged thrush, the thrush was aged. Here you need to remember that the poet was not telling about a young thrush, it was aged. The word aged may also indicate that the thrush was of the 19th century. It was frail, means lean, weak, gaunt, and small. It was very small, in blast virapal plume. Plume means feather. From the feathers of the bird, it can be understood that it has struggled much, and yet it is singing full-heartedly in such dismal and desolate landscape. So it is singing of joy. Had chosen thus to fling his soul upon the growing gloom. There is gloom everywhere around, yet in such desolate and dismal landscape, the thrush is singing full-heartedly, it is singing of joy. Here you must remember the bird was singing an even song. It was an evening song. The poet may also indicate here of the Anglican Church, where it is customary to hold a prayer in the evening. The poet may also here indicate that religious faith may perhaps bring about hope. Now, in the fourth stanza, let us see. So little cause of carolings, the bird was singing forth of joy, but the poet thinks there is no cause of such caroling. There was dismal and desolate landscape around. There was depression all around, nothing joyous. So the poet thinks there is no such cause of caroling, of such ecstatic sound. The bird was singing full-heartedly, ecstatically. Whatever the source of the bird song might be, the poet didn't know of the source. So the poet thinks there was no cause of such caroling. What's written or terrestrial things, the source might not be something of these terrestrial things. The source must not be something of this earth. The source of joy must be something out of this earth, afar or nigh around, near or far, there is no such source of joy from which the bird has taken the form of joy and singing full-heartedly, that I could think there trembled through his happy good night air. The bird was singing so full-heartedly, but the poet did not find that cause on this earth. Some blessed hope whereof he knew there might be some blessed hope that the bird knew, but I don't. The poet didn't know the source of that joyous song. The source might be some blessed hope, whereof he knew. The bird must have known the source, but I didn't. The poem ends with a note of disbelief. The bird was singing forth joy, hope, but the poet could not believe, could not rely on the joy and hope brought about by the song of the bird. So the poem is thus obscure in understanding. The source of the song of the bird remains obscure. Not only this, the bird was blast bedazzled. How could he sing? Such questions arose in the mind of the poet. So the bird was darkling. The bird was unlike the skylark, unlike the nightingale. The bird was blast bedazzled, yet it sang full-heartedly. So the bird was darkling, the bird was obscure, was in the dark, the bird was mystical. In such desolate and dismal landscape, how can the bird sing? So the bird was darkling. I am waiting eagerly for your feedback. for the lecture. Please let me know how it works. Thank you. Stay tuned to it.